There are a lot of gardeners who like to get a jump on the growing season by planting out a few things like tomatoes a few weeks before our last average frost date. Now, since tomatoes are frost tender, they need to be protected through the last bit of our cold weather. Now, on our show in the past, we've shown you things like this wall of water. It's just a double-walled plastic sleeve with all of these little compartments that we fill up with water that helps protect the plant during cold weather. You can see the little tomato plant down inside there. Now, this little twig we've got here is just to kind of hold it open so it can get light during the day. But if we see the weather and it's going to be a really cold night, we can come out and remove that twig, and these kind of close in. You get a little extra water on your plant if it's overfilled there. But that closes in, protects the plant during that cold weather. The water will soak up heat during the day, radiate it back to the plant at night, and also helps keep some of that ground warmth in around the plant as well. Now, you can also use something like this plastic cloche we've got right here. This is sort of an inexpensive or less expensive form of the glass bell jars that were used at one time in a lot of our gardens. But this fits down over the plant and also helps keep that heat from the ground in at night and protects the plant really well. Now, on a bright sunny day, it'd be important to keep this off of the plant so too much heat doesn't build up inside there. Well, if you don't want to put out the expense for either of these items, you could make your very own less expensive little teepee or tent out of just some old newspaper. And this works pretty much the same way, holds that ground heat in around the plant, and it's really easy to make. You just take your favorite newspaper, maybe one that you really enjoyed reading a while back, and you just take that and sort of roll it up in kind of a cone shape, and you just want it to look sort of like a little teepee. And you can again fasten that with a stapler up at the top and the bottom. You could also just use something like some pins or some sharp nails and hold the shape together in that way, and then put that over the plant. You can see here I've just kind of raked some soil up over that to keep it from blowing away, and that will work in much the same way as our cloche and our wall of water. When the weather's warmed up and we don't have threat of frost or freezing temperatures anymore, you can come out, remove those pins, and take your newspaper and spread those out as a mulch in your garden, because they will help suppress the weeds while they are decomposing. Well, right over here in this part of our garden, we've planted some broccoli, and a little bit earlier on we noticed that some of the plants had been snipped off at the ground. Something had been out here chewing on them. So then we knew that we had cutworms. So Laura and some of the gardeners got out some little pieces of cardboard and created some little collars for the plants. We just wrap these around the stems, keep those cutworms from girdling those stems and destroying our plants. We can use little pieces of cardboard, styrofoam coffee cups with the bottoms cut out work great. Some people will even take a section of a plastic drinking straw and slit the side and wrap that around the stem. But we just need to protect those stems while they're still small. Once they get a little bit larger, they're a little bit tougher and they can fend for themselves. It's important to know that healthy garden plants come from being grown in healthy soil. And I can't stress to you enough how important it is to incorporate lots of organic matter into your garden. Organic matter like this compost here. Here at our studio gardens, we like to apply about a 4 to 6 inch layer of compost and till it in every few years here at our studio on all of our beds. Now, that's one way we get organic matter into our garden. Another way we get organic matter in our vegetable garden here is the mulch we use. We use an organic mulch, or more specifically, whenever we're mowing our lawns out here, we have a bagging attachment on our mower. Once the bag fills up with grass clippings, we just come over and dump those into the vegetable garden, and they help suppress weeds, hold in moisture, and as it decomposes, helps build up the soil with a little extra organic matter. Well, this is some of the stuff we had last fall, and as you can see, it hasn't really decomposed yet. It has a lot of leaves and pine needles and things like that in it. If you have mulch like this on your vegetable garden, it's a good idea to rake that aside in the springtime, then do your tilling and planting, and then come back and rake it back onto the garden. We don't want to till this into the soil because we can get some nitrogen tie-up and our plants will suffer. So rake that stuff aside, till and plant, and then put it back. You especially want to rake aside any mulches that are composed of wood chips or any bark type materials. Another thing to remember is that if you're going to use any animal manures as a source of organic matter in your garden, those need to be well composted. As a general rule, it's a good idea to compost any animal manures at least 4 months before you put them on the garden. And if you could compost them a little bit longer, it'd probably even be better. We want to make sure any harmful pathogens are destroyed in the heat of the composting. Whenever we're planning out our vegetable gardens in the spring, it's important that we plan appropriately. We want to make sure we have enough produce for our table, but at the same time, we don't want to overplant. Now, we can always take that extra produce down to a food bank or a shelter, and they're always glad to get it. But you don't want to make your garden so big that it's not really an enjoyment to be out working in it. You don't want to work yourself to death out in the garden. You might ask your family members to see if you can get some commitment from them to see if they're going to help you tend the garden once it gets going. And if they're not really planning on helping out much, you may be better off and have more time and have a better time with a small patch of vegetables and maybe just a few raised beds. Now, in our raised beds, we grow all sorts of things, all sorts of vegetables, and we can get quite a bit of produce just from a couple of raised beds. Some other neat things you can do if you have a very small vegetable patch is that you can help manually control some of the pests so we don't have to use any chemical pesticides. For instance, if you have maybe 1 or 2 zucchini plants or 1 or 2 squash plants, each day you can go out into the garden and you can catch all those adult squash bugs that causes so many problems, and you can destroy them any way you want to. And then any of those squash bug eggs, you can just destroy those and keep those insect population numbers down. We can also pick away the Colorado potato beetles from our potatoes, and we can also, with some rubber gloves, capture any blister beetles that might be eating on our eggplants or our tomatoes. It's also important in the garden to practice good garden hygiene. By that I mean we need to keep our gardens clean. We not only want to keep all the weeds pulled or hoed from our gardens, but if we notice any diseased plants, it's a good idea to get those out of there right away. Now, any garden debris that's left over from last year also needs to be removed, like this old tomato plant here. We not only want to pull out the old plants, but any of the fruit that may be lying around underneath the plants. We can gather up all of those. That's important as well, because these can harbor disease and pests that can harm the plants we want to plant this year. So clean all that up, pick up all that old fruit, and either burn it somewhere if that's possible, or throw them into a hot, actively working compost heap and turn them into organic matter for your garden. Another thing to remember is that if you garden near an open field or a vacant lot, you may have some weeds or other native plants nearby that could harbor some pests and disease for your cultivated plants. For instance, this is a silverleaf nightshade in the nightshade family, obviously, and this is a plant family that includes our tomatoes, our eggplants, our peppers, and our tomatoes. We also have a buffalo burr here, and looks just kind of nasty with those prickly stems and fruiting structures there. But both of these plants can harbor insects and diseases that can affect our good nightshade family member vegetables. They can harbor things like flea beetles, blister beetles, even tobacco mosaic virus. So check all those fields around your vegetable area, and if you find any of these native nightshades, anything that has flowers that look similar to the tomatoes or peppers that you're growing, you might want to get those out of that area. When we rotate our crops, it's important to not only rotate the same plants. We don't want to plant peppers year after year in the same spot, but we also wouldn't want to plant other members of that family year after year in the same spot. Same way with cucurbits or something like that. We wouldn't want to plant zucchini followed by watermelon in the same spot year after year because we get those pest numbers built up. So when we rotate crops, rotate the entire families. Maybe nightshades one year, then cucurbits the next year. So that way we can keep those insect numbers down and we won't have those populations building up year after year. So remember, if you've got any tomato plants out this time of the year, make sure you keep those protected until our freezing weather is over. Watch out for those cutworms and plan out your garden so you don't work yourself too hard this year, and be sure and keep your garden clean. Compost any of those yard wastes so you can have lots of organic matter to enrich your garden soil. And I hope you have good success this spring gardening season.